All right, so maybe given that it is 11:03, I think we'll kick off and start for those who've been able to join. So welcome to International Insolvency Institute's webinar on Tales from the Crypt. My name is DJ Miller, and I'm a partner in the Canadian insolvency and litigation law firm Thornton, Grout, Finnigan. I'm one of 3 co-chairs of the III's Regional Committee for the Canada, US, Caribbean region. And my fellow co-chairs are Robin Itkin, who's a partner in the firm Sklar Kirsch, based in Los Angeles, and Kenneth Chris, who's the founder and executive chairman of Chris Global, based in the Caribbean. And we have been and continue to be greatly assisted on this regional committee by Adam Crane, who is a NextGen member of III. Adam is a senior associate at HSM Chambers, based in Cayman. So it is my pleasure to serve as moderator for the panel today and to introduce you to our distinguished speakers. One of our speakers, Dr. Jason Corbett of Silk Legal in Thailand, was unfortunately pulled into an emergency that had him hopping on a flight to Dubai at midnight last night. So unfortunately, he won't be able to join us. But let me introduce Timothy Graulich, who is a partner in Davis Polk's restructuring group based in New York. He leads the firm's international restructuring group. He has substantial experience in a broad range of domestic and international restructurings, representation of public and private companies, agent banks and lenders, acquirers, and hedge funds in connection with both prepackaged and traditional bankruptcies, and Section 363 sales, bankruptcy litigation, DIP, and exit financings. We're also joined by Sharon Hamilton, who is the Toronto Turnaround and Restructuring Strategy Leader and a Senior Vice President in Ernst & Young's Strategy and Transactions practice. She's based in Toronto, although the nature of her practice involves a lot of international travel, when we're not in a pandemic, that is. And she has extensive experience in several of the largest national and international insolvency cases in Canada, including one very unusual ongoing cryptocurrency case that I'm sure we'll be hearing about later today. So today's webinar, unlike some, is not going to be the technical nuts and bolts of cryptocurrency. And so while it will cover some of the key aspects, no pun intended, in order just to ensure that everybody has a basic understanding of the issues that we're discussing. But really the webinar is going to focus on, and most of the hour that we have is going to be spent hearing from Sharon and Tim about the practical aspects of insolvency cases that involve cryptocurrency that they've been involved in. So you will have received a slide deck that was circulated to all of the attendees. And we're not going to be following the slide deck, but it was provided essentially as a resource because it does have a lot of information on this subject that we hope you will find useful. And thanks in particular to Sharon, who provided us with the slide deck that she had prepared and used for another presentation, and we were able to modify with helpful contributions from Tim so that it could be provided to you as a resource. So with that introduction, Sharon and Tim, if you're ready, I think we'll dive right into the presentation. And let me just start by way of a level set for everyone's benefit. Perhaps kicking over to Sharon first, if you could just describe kind of in layman's terms, non-technical terms, what cryptocurrency is.
Great question, DJ. So, fundamentally, I think in most places we would all agree it is property. It's an intangible digital asset. To try to simplify it, it uses cryptography, a form of encryption, to secure a network and transactions. And all of these transactions are recorded on what we refer to as a blockchain, which is just a network of computers that are all working together, lending their computing power to essentially record a long list of these transactions in an open ledger. But fundamentally, it's a form of property. The bigger question is it currency? Because many people will say, cryptocurrency, right? It's intended to be a form of currency. It's intended to be an item that has inherent value. Having said that, while it does certainly have some characteristics of that, in many jurisdictions, it wouldn't meet all of the elements to qualify as currency. It's not government backed. It's not necessarily a stable store of value. So I think that there are debates on whether legally it is currency, but certainly it's something that people intend in many ways to use as currency, but a type of currency that provides a very anonymous, decentralized way to spend money.
Yeah, and DJ, just a couple of points on that, if I can. I think that one of the dichotomies we're going to be talking about today is the difference between people's expectations and maybe like the legal implications of what they're doing. And so there is going to be a mismatch. You're going to see this amongst customer expectations. Hey, I thought I was dealing in something that was one type of thing, and I thought maybe I was dealing with an institution that was a type of institution that I'm familiar with in other types of transactions. But it just turns out to be that's legally not really what you're doing, right? And on the point that Sharon just made with respect to the swing of values, I don't know if folks have been following what has happened, like even today. I don't think it has anything to do with this conference, but you put cryptocurrency and bankruptcy together in the same sentence, and all of a sudden it affects the marketplace. But just a few sort of suggestive statistics. Bitcoin, right, which is like probably the most famous of the cryptocurrencies, is down 44% since April, right? The type of thing that you would think is normally, gee, that sounds like a lot, until you know that it's actually up 300% in the last 12 months, taking into account the fact that it's down 44% in the last few weeks, right? And the types of things that cause this to change is like when Elon Musk says we are or aren't going to take Bitcoin as currency to purchase vehicles, and whether or not he's hoarding Bitcoin or if he's selling Bitcoin. So it's incredibly it has these incredible swings in it. Another sort of currency, Dogecoin, which is sort of like a joke. It started like literally as like a joke on cryptocurrency, is up 26,000% in the last 6 months, right? So that's the kinds of swings that you could see. And obviously if they keep going up, that's not the kind of thing that necessarily lends itself to insolvencies, but things that go up also come down. And so that's what folks are playing at when they are investing in this quote currency that has the incredible swings, that has all of the other traits that Sharon was talking about, the anonymity and whatnot. So that there's a couple of factors here that makes this interesting to folks in our space.
Absolutely. And so we hear reference, when we're reading about and hearing about cryptocurrency, reference to keys and how important the keys are. Like for the non-technical or lay people who are attending who may not have dealt with a cryptocurrency matter before, what exactly does that mean, this reference to keys? Tim or Sharon? Go ahead.
I can take that one. So you'll often hear about what's called a public key and a private key. And I would just liken that to the public key is really the address. So think of it as your email address, your account name. Public key is something that you give to parties. If you want them to send you cryptocurrency, you have to give them an address as to where to send it to. And so you will make your public key known. You'll give it to parties. Transactions are tracked by the public key in the ledger. The private key is what I refer to as the password, right? So that's what you want to keep private and confidential, and that's going to let you access your cryptocurrency if it's held on a wallet. And that's where you want to keep it private, because if you've got cryptocurrency held within a wallet and someone knows your public key, if they have your private key, they can access it. There are no other controls that they have to go to. They don't have to sign, show ID, nothing else. So I would just refer to those public keys and private keys for most people as the address and the password.
Yeah, that's a good, easy way to think of it. So,
and I think there's actually going to be a legal consequence frequently that flows from that. So you just sort of think about either your own, you know, if you're involved in making these types of investments, or if you're involved in a case where your client has made these types of investments, the legal consequence of whether or not the investor is in possession of that private key, or whether or not that password is sort of maintained by the exchange that you're investing on. Actually, different exchanges do it differently, but you do see in some of the more famous failures that sort of password was sort of controlled by the exchange itself. Now, you may have your own private wallet that you could take the coins off the exchange and put it in that private wallet that may have a separate private key. But frequently when you see these exchanges fail, the coins are sort of with the exchange, and the exchange may have control over those private keys.
And I think, Tim, just what you've touched on, I think we need to build that out a bit, and let's just have a brief discussion about exactly how cryptocurrency is held, because you've referenced, wallets and exchanges, and again, just a level set so that we're all on the same page. Can you just briefly talk about like how cryptocurrency is in fact held?
Yeah, so effectively, where it resides is in something called a wallet, right? And if sort of think about it like a wallet that you would keep money in. So there's the nomenclature on this is sort of a hot wallet and a cold wallet. A cold wallet is actually the hot and cold refers to whether or not it's effectively connected, basically whether it's connected online so that you can actually make transactions with it. So if you have something in a cold wallet, it's sort of offline in a storage effectively, but a hot wallet is one that is sort of connected that you can make trades from. The hot wallet is frequently, although not exclusively, sometimes you actually see hacking into the cold wallets. That should be actually like harder to do. In fact, that usually requires somebody to, it requires more than just, it requires opportunity, right? Is what it comes down to. You need somebody who has sort of physical access to it in order to do that, I think. But the hot wallet is where a lot of the hacking takes place, and there's a hot wallet, for example, on an exchange. So how do you buy and deal with cryptocurrency frequently? I mean, I guess you could be one of these folks that has like the supercomputers where you mine for Bitcoin, right? But the ordinary investor, how do they do it? Is they actually go to an exchange that could be located, different parts of the world. That sort of looks like if you're a frequent investor in, for example, securities, may look a little bit from the outside like it's like a broker dealer. It's in fact legally nothing like a broker dealer. It doesn't have any of the protections that a broker dealer would have, at least under U.S. law. And you sort of buy and sell, you transact through the exchange. And if you keep your tokens or coins on the exchange, it's probably kept in a custodial wallet at the exchange. And we can get into this in a little bit as to whether or not that's kept with other people's investments and what's the legal consequence of that. But effectively, where you keep, whether it's in a hot wallet or a cold wallet, you keep the currency, the cryptocurrency in a wallet, and the hot and cold is just a question of whether or not it's effectively online.
And Sharon, where are those types of exchanges typically located? Like what geographic regions, or is there any pattern, or is it just, could it be anywhere?
So interestingly, there are exchanges located all around the world because it is an online business. It does not require any bricks or mortar. It's highly unregulated. And so, anyone can open up an exchange anywhere in the world. We do see them in every country. At the risk of generalizing a bit, I think we see some better ones in certain jurisdictions that are at least trying to follow some, orderly process. And then you've got ones in other jurisdictions where you've seen a lot of issues because, if things go awry, there's just very little ability to go after those exchanges, even more so than in some of the more developed jurisdictions. And that's a danger. People need to know who they're dealing with.
And yeah, and it's interesting because you could just go onto your computer and tap into an exchange in New Zealand or in China or in the United States. If something happens, it may be a very different outcome, and so that's something to be aware of. And also, certain jurisdictions seem to be, like, for whatever reason, China seems to be very hostile to having, I think that to a certain extent, government, what governments, so there's at least two aspects to it. Part of it is, are local governments prepared to try and regulate this in any way, and how successful is that? And also, I think to a certain extent, it's the criminal aspect to it, which is that, a non-trivial amount of transactions that happen using digital currency. Every year the FBI and other law enforcement agencies talk about, like, it's a non-trivial amount of transactions, and so I think that makes certain jurisdictions nervous about the fact, like, hey, are we becoming like a haven for illicit transactions? And so, I think they are located everywhere. Some jurisdictions seem to be more hostile to them being in their jurisdiction than others.
Okay, and when issues do arise, and they inevitably do, and you've touched on the fact that they do, and that there may be different outcomes depending on where these exchanges are located, what are some of the key issues that you would identify that insolvency practitioners would need to be aware of if you're dealing with a situation involving cryptocurrency? Maybe Sharon, I'll start with you, and then we'll ask Tim to weigh in.
Yeah, so I think, it's important for all of us because I think more and more, cryptocurrency has become widespread enough that, whether we actually deal with a cryptocurrency exchange or not, we're going to see cryptocurrency, right? We're going to see ordinary debtors holding cryptocurrency assets, et cetera. And so we're going to have to deal with this. And in my mind, it comes back to, some basic principles. As insolvency professionals, you need to be able to identify cryptocurrency assets. If there's an insolvency proceeding, you might have to take possession. Often you're going to have to deal with jurisdictional issues. And then, if you do take possession, how do you realize on those assets? How do you preserve them? And how do you deal with distributions to creditors? So you have to come back to all those key principles. And what we're finding is that cryptocurrency is so different than any other asset that it's not that easy. So, if I just start with even identifying a cryptocurrency asset, I think in most of our worlds, we're used to assets that are either registered to a party or physically in the possession of a party, right? So if we think about it, we can go to a manufacturing plant, we can see all the equipment, all the physical things that we can take possession of. Even IP is registered often, right, through patents, or real estate is registered. So we have cryptocurrency, and it really doesn't fit that. It's not physical. You can't hold it in your hand. You can't go and actually physically take possession. And it's not really registered to anybody, right? It's got this anonymity concept. And so if you've got a debtor that has cryptocurrency assets, sometimes even just identifying it is a challenge. And if you've got uncooperative debtors who aren't going to help you with that, it's even more of a challenge. And then you've got this whole global nature that, where is it? If you need help to be able to go deal with it. Well, what jurisdiction are you asking for that help from? Because it's not clear where the cryptocurrency is from a jurisdictional perspective. So there's a lot of issues there, even just at that identification stage.
Right, and Tim, the point that you mentioned, just in terms of for example, the drop in value of 44% since April with Bitcoin alone, like just even issues like how do you deal with in an insolvency proceeding that type of material change in value? You know, if somebody holds, in your example, Bitcoin, how do you deal with that material change in value in the context of an insolvency proceeding where that may be an asset?
Yeah, so I mean, and I think there's a corollary to this as to how do you try to prevent getting into this position in the first place, right? So actually, let me start with that, and then I'll get into the question you just asked. So, so for example, you know, lenders to companies, as you know, Sharon is indicated, you know, we don't have to just be dealing with exchanges. We could just be dealing with regular way companies that have made investments. I think more and more we're seeing our banking clients have restrictions on what companies can do to sort of make sure, you know, everything's great as long as it's going up, but you know, it's this yo-yo effect of you know, taking assets that are more conventional, converting them into these assets that are harder to wrap your arms around and harder to value and are subject to these fluctuations. I think is something that people are starting to be concerned about just when they're doing new deals. But the how to deal with the fluctuation, I mean, one of this comes up in when there's a failure of or it sometimes precipitates a failure of an exchange. Now, an exchange, if it's properly, if it's actually properly organized and properly cared after by its board and by its management, the fact that the assets that they're trading go up and down may not be all that material to the sort of integrity of the system. But there are issues like, you know, there was a US exchange last year called Cred that failed, and based upon the examiner report, failed in large measure because it could not handle the very fluctuations that are expected in this currency is in part what caused it to fail. And then what you then run into, which is something that, you know, came up in, for example, in Mt. Gox, but is also going to, I think, going to be an issue in Cred, and actually in other cases where either it's because of it's an exchange or because of the fluctuation in value. What do you actually do if literally you know, an asset can go up, you know, not too many regular businesses invest in Dogecoin, for example, but an asset that can go up and presumably down 26,000% in 6 months, you could be looking at a materially different profile, particularly when you're talking about exchanges, on the date of distribution versus the date of the filing. And so there are all types of issues, I think, embedded in this. If you want to analogize an exchange to a broker dealer, at least in the US, there's a whole series of regulations, right, about what happens if you have an investment with a broker dealer who fails. Think of, you know, Lehman, right? If you're a customer, if you could demonstrate that you're a customer, you get your investment back, which obviously you would want if the investment has increased. That's, first of all, there's, at least not in the US, there's no protection, insolvency protection associated with an exchange. But if you have an exchange where basically all of the crypto, until you remove it and put it on your own, into your own private wallet, it's kept in a custodial wallet, right? And the example of Cred, for example, indicated that it was all sort of commingled, wasn't really such great you know, records about things. What exactly do you do if in most insolvency regimes, in most insolvency regimes, if you're a claimant you have a claim fixed on the date of the filing of bankruptcy. In many jurisdictions, there's a requirement that you be paid, that claim be satisfied in a, well, at least be converted into the local currency, right? None of which is sort of like what your expectation probably is if you're invested, if you're trading Bitcoin, and it fails. I don't think your expectation is necessarily, oh, great, I'm an unsecured creditor of this failed enterprise, and if maybe I'm happy with that if everything goes down, but if things go up, what do you do, right? And is there an ability to, if you know for sure that someone had 100 Bitcoins in their on their ledger, can you return that to them? Or is the answer no, I have to value it as of the date of the petition and give you the cash equivalent to that? And then what do you do if everything's gone up? What do you do with the surplus? Do you go through like a regular waterfall and distribute it to who? To equity, the folks that ran the now insolvent exchange? So it does, I think, create interesting challenges when it fails, and also I think challenges for when you're advising your client before they enter into certain types of transactions, as to, are you supposed to be leaving stuff on a daily basis or on a weekly basis on the exchange, or are you supposed to be removing it? And obviously that's an extra step and putting it into your own dedicated cold wallet. But there are definitely risks associated with leaving this at the exchange, and on top of it, on what law is going to govern the exchange. You could be sitting in the UK making your investments, but the exchange is sitting in halfway across the world, and so I think those types of and given the ultimate overlay here is that there is so little regulation for these types of businesses that the type of customer protection that you're used to seeing when you invest in a security, which of course could go up and down, but it's just a different animal, legally speaking, than this, even though people, when they invest to round out their portfolio, may view it not that differently than, I've invested in Bitcoin, I've also invested in gold, I've invested in Tesla stock. Those are actually very different investments.
Yeah, and just to add to that, when you're faced with this decision, whether to hold your cryptocurrency on an exchange or in your own cold wallet, there are risks associated with wealth, right? As Tim set out, putting your cryptocurrency on an exchange subjects it to the risk of the exchange failing or not being able to honor what it owes to you. If it doesn't have good controls, if it doesn't remain solvent, if it's off in some crazy jurisdiction and who knows what happens, you could lose that. On the other hand, putting all your crypto on a wallet on your own little device, well, you better not lose that device, because if you do, there's really no way to get it back, right? And if you forget the private key or the password for that, you may not be able to ever access it. So there are risks both ways. I know that some parties or some lenders, banks are looking at wanting people to have cryptocurrency insurance, but I think that's still in its infancy and limited and expensive because of the high risks as to what can go wrong.
So have either of you seen, given these issues with currency and valuing, both in terms of the date of filing and the issue of when distributions are made in a proceeding, have you seen situations where the currency in which the claims are filed and the distributions are made is actually the cryptocurrency as opposed to, or Bitcoin as opposed to, Canadian dollars, US dollars, that type of thing? I mean, is that happening?
I could take that one first. The Cred case that I just spoke about, and so in the US, there's actually been more examples of what we call Chapter 15, or recognition of foreign insolvency cases involving these exchanges. Mt. Gox, Cryptopia. There's just more examples of foreign insolvencies needing to file in the United States for one reason or the other. But Cred was it's much smaller than some of these other exchanges, but was a U.S. Company that actually did a bunch of different things, but including trading currency on behalf of quote customers. In that case, the baseline is that you have a claim as of the petition date, and that you're supposed to get, because it's a liquidation. Most of the a failure of a cryptocurrency exchange, I think I don't know that I've ever seen one that's led to a reorganization. I think it always sort of inevitably liquidates, if for no other reason, the sort of crisis of confidence in the exchange. And so what normally happens is the mandate is to sort of sell everything, hopefully sell it in a way that doesn't disrupt the market. I mean, if you have a big enough holding of a particular type of currency or a particular token, you might actually disrupt the market for that. And that's I think its own series of complications. But assuming once that's done, the baseline for Cred, for example, was a distribution in US dollars. Based upon your claim as of the petition date. There was, so I've not seen this before in a US case, but then again, I'm not so sure that there's that many precedent US cases, that you could make an election to be repaid back in the cryptocurrency that you had previously invested in. But my understanding is of that election was also going to be tied to a petition date valuation, right? So it wasn't, if cryptocurrency, if your Bitcoin or whatever currency that you have invested in has gone up 100%, that doesn't mean you're going to get the 100% upswing. But there was a reservation of rights in the plan, and so I'm assuming that the plan was just approved, I think, like last month. Where this issue, it looks like it's being preserved for people to be able to come in and make an argument that the petition date just simply isn't the right date, because I think there's an additional issue with this, which is if the failure was caused by a hack, a breach, right? There's a fairness question here that if the hack was the failure of the exchange as opposed to any individual investor's failure, if you just go ahead and start giving people back their investments, well, that means that there's going to be some profound winners and losers here. What do you do about that loss, right? How do you socialize that loss? So there's a certain rationality to, and it's also the way I think most of us sort of think. In a liquidation, you just sort of sell everything and then make a distribution. But there is a certain rationality if there has been a loss suffered through no fault of certainly any of the creditors, that to sort of socialize that loss, you can't just start handing people back, even if you knew who they were, right? Even if you had perfect records, because that means somebody would get paid in full and someone else would get paid zero if in fact all of their investment had been hacked. But once you're done with that, once you're done sort of fixing that loss, I think it is an open question, and maybe we'll see it in this case, maybe we'll see it in a subsequent case in the US, as to what you're supposed to really do with the excess value and who has like the right insolvency / equitable claim to that. Is there additional distributions made to folks, but all sort of proportionate to what their pre-petition bankruptcy claim was, or do you pick some other date for distribution?
Right. So I want to move, there's so many aspects of what you guys have just said that I could ask a million more questions on, but I want to, in keeping with our promise, to talk about some of the actual war stories and the practical aspects of dealing with insolvency proceedings involving cryptocurrency, I want to just turn for a minute and talk about some of those war stories or the unusual situations that you've uncovered as you've been dealing in insolvency proceedings involving cryptocurrency. And Sharon, I'm going to start with you because certainly from a Canadian perspective, the situation involving Quadriga, which has, captivated a lot of us for some time in Canada, was highly unusual. And, we're seeing headlines relating to the founder's dead body being exhumed and requests for, confirmation of identity and things like that, which is fairly extraordinary in our ordinary course insolvency proceedings. So maybe if you can just spend a few minutes and talk about some of the situations that you've encountered in that case or in others.
Sure, and it is a bit of a fascinating story. I understand there's a Hollywood movie in the works, so I'll try to give you the high-level snapshot. But Quadriga was, at the time, the largest cryptocurrency exchange in Canada. And it was founded by an individual, fairly young individual, who founded this business, kind of ran it as a one-man show. He had a number of people that he would pay on contract to help him with certain aspects, but he really kind of ran the business himself. And it had deposits of either fiat, Canadian or US dollars, or various forms of cryptocurrency from, really tens of thousands of users. And so what happened is, this all came to light when one day he and his wife were off on vacation in India, and he suddenly died. And, this was very unexpected. As I say, he was quite young. His widow came back to Canada, and the story was, well, he ran the business. He had the private keys to all the wallets. And so nobody can access, there's nobody that knows the private key, and we can't access the wallet. And all of these customers or users of the exchange are seeking to withdraw their cryptocurrency, and nobody can access the wallet. And so initially, this was looked at as, well, there needs to be an insolvency proceeding to bring some order to this, but that it could be a restructuring. And so it was filed as a CCAA in Canada, sort of similar to a Chapter 11. And we were appointed as the monitor, which is required under Canadian proceedings. But very quickly, it morphed into looking at it and saying, well, you know what? We don't have the private key to the wallets, but we do have the public keys, and we can go online on the internet and look at a ledger to see what's in those wallets. And guess what? There's not much there. So where is the cryptocurrency, right? So it's not an issue of just passwords or private keys, but the cryptocurrency is missing. And substantial sums of cryptocurrency. And so, after the monitor did a fairly extensive investigation and filed some reports, it became apparent that there had been a lot of things going on that people weren't aware of. So this individual who ran the cryptocurrency exchange had taken cryptocurrency that had been received from users, transferred it off exchange to other exchanges, to other places. It seems traded it there, not sure where the funds went to at the end of the day. There seems to have been a lot of trading done under fake accounts that actually lost money and depleted the cryptocurrency reserves. There were certainly a lot of funds withdrawn from the business that funded, I guess we can call it a lavish lifestyle, which included multiple homes, boats, planes, international vacations, boat monthly on private jets. And so a lot of information. I mean, very quickly, the police became involved, the securities commissions became involved, although, it wasn't completely clear as to what role they had. But they did become involved, and they did a very extensive investigation. So at the end of the day, the cryptocurrency was really gone. And so it wasn't a matter of private keys. It was a matter of, it was gone. And as trustee, this morphed into a full bankruptcy. As trustee, we went to great lengths to see what could be recovered. And this all highlighted a whole bunch of issues around cryptocurrency, and I'll maybe just set them out. But from day one, jurisdiction became an issue because, as I had mentioned, where does this business really operate? And I know in the US it's a little different. Often you can file an insolvency filing in any jurisdiction you can make a limited tie to. In Canada, it's a little different. There are rules, and you often look at where the business was located, where its head office was, where the majority of its assets are. Well, none of those tests really apply to a cryptocurrency business. To illustrate in this one, the actual entity was registered in the province of British Columbia, but there had never been any ties to there. He had been living in the province of Ontario when he started it, had then moved to Halifax, but it was 100% an online business. It had no office. Cryptocurrency was kept in wallets, which don't really have any physical semblance. And so it wasn't really clear what the jurisdiction was. And so there were implications of that. To go through some of the other issues, trying to identify whether there were assets out there to recover and to obtain them. We did manage to do a fair bit of investigation to trace initial transfers of cryptocurrency assets from Quadriga's wallets to other exchanges all over the world. And we went through a process to contact all of these exchanges. And this is where, knowing who you're doing business with really comes into play. I will say that were a few exchanges that were cooperative to a degree. They did respond to us. We tried to provide court orders, et cetera, around why we were entitled to know whether there were still assets there for recovery. Obviously, in some cases, he was able to open accounts under pseudonyms. Sometimes we got through some of that, and some provided responses, mostly to say that the cryptocurrency had left there and there was nothing left there to obtain anyway. But many other exchanges were in questionable jurisdictions that either refused to respond or just said, come to our country and get an order. And even then, and so very, very difficult to go after these assets. So that was another issue. Most of the recovery that the trustee was able to get actually came not from cryptocurrency, but from being able to essentially through a settlement agreement take over the houses that he purchased, the boat, the plane, et cetera, and monetize those assets. And so, again, a fascinating case, a number of different issues. I think Tim also raised this issue of, when you evaluate, because there's very little cryptocurrency, any distribution to creditors in the future will be in regular old Canadian currency, but it actually requires converting everybody's claims to that common basis of Canadian currency. And because these users had claims, in their account denominated in either Canadian, US dollars, or, 8 to 10 different types of cryptocurrency, what date do you actually convert it all at? The natural dates that were in the running were, of course, the bankruptcy date or the CCAA date that preceded it by a couple months. And the change in the value of certain cryptocurrencies was significant between those dates and really will affect creditor distributions. And so that was the subject of a whole other motion. So a very, very interesting case that highlights the issues around, knowing who you're dealing with. I guess to add one other thing, there are literally no books and records for this entity. One of the challenges with many cryptocurrency businesses is they can't obtain regular bank accounts to even deal with their operating expenses because many banks won't deal with cryptocurrency companies because they can't comply with Know Your Client legislation or anti-money laundering legislation. And so what this business did is it would find friends on the street willing to open a bank account in their name, hand them literally stacks of physical cash, and have them send out monies. Well, unless you have a record of who all those people are and can access their bank accounts, you're never going to be able to track that down. And given that the business literally kept no books and records, never filed a tax return. There's really no records for the business, which has created another whole challenge. So it is a fascinating case and continues to be ongoing.
So I guess the question I would have is, do we have to wait for the Hollywood movie, or can you tell us whether the body was exhumed and whether the identity of the founder was confirmed? Because there was a lot of suspicion on whether, you know, for $100 or so, somebody obtained a death certificate in India, and it wasn't really the body.
there are, and you know, there people have analyzed it. The media has gone over and traced the timeline between when he died in hospital and what happened to the body, etc. There are many theories, everything from you know, he's not dead and it's a fake body, to he was, you know, killed by his wife, killed by some dubious characters that he stiffed on money, and you know, everything that we've heard of. There have been numerous requests by creditors to exhume the body, made to the RCMP, which is the Canadian, you know, police. As far as I know, they have not sought to exhume the body, but I do understand they've done a fair bit of investigation into these issues, much of which I'm not completely privy to because I believe their own investigation is ongoing. So I can't speak to that, but certainly there's a lot of speculation amongst many parties as to whether he's really dead and whose body is buried in Nova Scotia.
Right, which harkens back to like 30 years ago in the Bre-X conspiracies and all of that. So Tim, maybe just turning to you, what are some of the unusual situations or war stories or you know, examples to sort of build on, which Sharon has touched on, that you've seen in dealing with cryptocurrency, that for insolvency practitioners, for those of, you know, of us and the attendees in the webinar, what are the things, sort of lessons learned or things from practical experience that you're able to pass on? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, so you know, one matter that we did a couple of years ago was for a New Zealand exchange called Cryptopia, which dealt in, it was an exchange that dealt in, you know, I think 300 different types of currencies could be traded on Cryptopia's platform, including some that were sort of bespoke tokens that only existed on that platform. There was a hack, there was a theft, and there was a liquidation that was commenced in New Zealand, and you know, but for this important complication that I'm about to describe, that probably would have been the end of it. There would not have necessarily been any reason to commence a proceeding in the United States. Surely there were investors from the United States, but you know, there are investors from all over the planet, so you know, no particular nexus to the U.S. But what was here was a you know, shocking that it turns out this would be the most cost-effective place. It probably was like a friend of a friend is how this got set up, probably. But the server on which they kept all of the data as to who invested what when was located on a server in Arizona. And the owner of said server, which probably they do the same thing for everybody who fails to pay. Hey, there's been a, you know, you haven't paid for a few months, and the company, I guess, post-hack had not been so diligent about making certain payments, so they were not paying the owner of this sort of storage farm of, you know, it was just server after server at this complex. The answer was, we're going to wipe your server and we'll return the server to you. Now, had they done that, right, and the amounts associated with this were sort of disproportionately small to basically that would have like prevented any distribution to anybody, because whatever records folks had were located on this server. And so we had to commence a Chapter 15 in the United States, where we were able to be entrusted with all of the U.S. property, which included all of this technology. But yeah, like, they were, if they had done it first and sent the letter afterwards, the liquidator would have had a very difficult time ever making distributions, I think, of any description because of what was located on those servers. So it's amazing if you're in a position where either you're a creditor, or even if you're have a mandate where you're sort of working for a liquidator under these circumstances, the sort of unique issues that could befall you because of the way these things operate, which is often without great records, or in this case, records housed exclusively in a, as far away from the center of the company as possible. Just sitting in the United States. It could have just as easily been sitting in some other country that didn't have, for example, unstral recognition, right? Where you could have had to have brought some, brand new lawsuit or something that, and by the time that was resolved, all the records are gone, right? This is something also from a U.S. perspective that I just want to raise, because Sharon had raised it earlier about the sort of differences between the U.S. regime and the Canadian regime. Interestingly, and I don't think this is a surprise to folks, it's sort of not that difficult to file for bankruptcy in the United States. You don't need to be insolvent, and you don't need to have like your COMI or your center of main interest or anything that significant here. What you need to have is you need to have some property here, right? And so a bank account could do it, right? So even complicated exchanges where you're not so sure where wallets are deemed to exist or where cryptocurrency is deemed to exist, you could have pretty modest assets in the United States and be able to file here. What that does then create are all the recognition issues that Sharon was alluding to. I think actually get worse, right? In as much as in a U.S. case, and this is not just a cryptocurrency issue. This is an issue that arises. Think about all of the Latin American airlines that have filed in the United States. That all works. With the possible exception that when you need to go get that recognized elsewhere, you run into the issue of lots of other jurisdictions that actually have an unstral recognition statute will say, okay, well, we're supposed to look at foreign main proceeding, foreign non-main proceeding. Is there, where is COMI? Is there a do you have if COMI isn't in the United States, do you have an establishment there? Now on brick and mortar businesses like airlines, an establishment isn't going to be a problem, but on something like a cryptocurrency exchange, you may have a very successful Chapter 11 case that has recognition issues in different places because of the difficulty of having to establish either COMI or an establishment, which is just not a threshold that you're concerned with necessarily when you file a Chapter 11. So you do have to be thoughtful before you file a Chapter 11 if you think that you're going to need to have recognition as to how you're going to deal with that, because the standard for recognition that other countries use, and in fact the United States uses when it looks at recognizing cases that have been filed outside the United States, is not the same standard that we use to take a plenary case in the US. So it hasn't come up yet because, again, I don't think there has been that many US failures that have involved companies that buy and sell and trade cryptocurrency for customers. But that is something to be on the lookout for, because the recognition challenges that Sharon ran into are perhaps going to be greater if it was a U.S. filing.
And that's obviously an excellent point, and obviously of critical interest to our particular III interests and the interests of attendees, because those types of issues are front and center on many of the things that we address. So I just want to throw out there, and I should have mentioned at the beginning, but if anyone has a burning question that they want to ask one of our speakers on this, you can pop it into the chat and I will take a look at it. I know we have one question that's come in that I think can be fairly quickly addressed, but I just want to throw it out there for either one of you. And that is that if in what you were mentioning, you know, if you have it in a wallet and you lose the key, the equivalent of the password, is that gone forever? Like if you forget the password or the passcode, does it simply cease to exist, or what happens to it? Like, do the funds sort of go generally to others that are part of that exchange, or what happens to them? Do they just disappear into the ether?
You know, that's the caution, is that if you don't have the private key, you are not going to be able to access it. So, you know, the cryptocurrency doesn't cease to exist. It will just sit in that wallet forever. There's no mechanism for it to go anywhere. There's no reset password. There's no administrator that can reset your account for you. You know, it will just sit there in perpetuity in that wallet. And until somebody can actually come up with the private key, and who knows, maybe there'll be some encryption breaking way to do that in the future, although, you know, that this is pretty significant cryptography, it's just going to be stuck there forever.
Yeah, and I think that there are somewhat prominent examples of this where, you know, it's usually like a 21-year-old who invested at age like 15 and you know, with $50, and then now it turns out that it's like worth millions of dollars, and it's like and the guy can't access because he's like misplaced the key. So yeah, it does. And to be clear, I think in the question, the thought was, does this somehow get swept up with with an exchange? I think that the hypothetical with the private key is that that's already segregated. That's in your own wallet. But if you keep it yourself, right? So keeping it with the exchange, the concern is you're taking basically the credit risk of the exchange, right? But by the same token, you're reducing what happens if I lose if I lose the password, right? Whereas if you take it off and put it in your own wallet, you are solving one problem, but you are adopting this other problem. And if you're the kind of person that you know, frequently needs to call computer support because you can't open your laptop, you might not be the kind of person that wants to keep everything in your private wallet, because you know, there is no computer support to call.
Right. So word of caution. All right. Well, I think that, you know, in keeping with people's schedules and commitments, and we had indicated that it was going to be an hour, so I am going to wrap it up at this point. I don't see other questions in the chat, but let me thank both Sharon and Tim for contributing your time, your expertise, your resources to giving a great program today. And I hope I think it's been helpful to the attendees, and thank you also for the resource of the slide deck, which I know when people have a chance to go through, we'll probably provide some additional resources as well. So on behalf of my co-chairs, Robin and Ken, and the Regional Canada-US Caribbean Committee, thank you for participating, and thank you to all the attendees for joining us today. So thank you all.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you, DJ, and thank you to all the attendees.
Yes, and thank you, DJ, for getting us through today. Yeah.
My pleasure.